The fortress world of Tharmon hung in space like a steel crown around the gas giant below. 300 warships orbited the planet in perfect formation, their weapons pointed outward toward the dark. This was the pride of the Calvex Empire, a military power that ruled 47 star systems without challenge. No enemy had ever dared to approach these walls of metal and fire. Admiral Velkarn stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the sensor displays with half-closed eyes. Another boring day, another rotation of meaningless patrols. His empire had grown so large that war had become a memory, something the old soldiers spoke about in quiet voices. Now they just watched empty space and waited for nothing to happen. The sensor officer's voice broke the silence. "Admiral, we have a contact. Unknown vessel entering the outer system." Velkarn's eyes opened fully. "An unknown vessel here? In the most protected system in the Empire? Identification?" "None, sir. The ship is broadcasting a repeating message in a language our computers don't recognize. The vessel is small, perhaps 1/10 the size of our scouts. Design is completely foreign." The Admiral moved closer to the display. The ship looked wrong. Its hull was covered in odd angles and protruding sections. It had none of the smooth elegance of Calvex design, or the brutal efficiency of the few other species they had encountered. This thing looked like someone had built a ship from spare parts and hoped it would fly. "Send standard warning," Velkarn ordered. "Tell them they have entered restricted military space. Demand identification and immediate course change away from Tharmon." Inside the strange ship, Captain Doyen leaned forward in his chair, staring at the wall of warships that had suddenly appeared on his screens. "Well," he said slowly, "I think we found someone." The bridge of the Wandering Star was cramped compared to the vast spaces of the Calvex flagship. 7 people worked at stations that seemed too close together, surrounded by exposed pipes and blinking lights that gave the place a comfortable, lived-in feeling. They had been traveling for 8 months, searching for signs of intelligent life. Now they had found more than they bargained for. "Captain, they're sending a message," said Jiwoo from the communication station. "Audio only. I can't understand any of it, but they don't sound happy." "That's 300 warships out there," added Soman from navigation, her voice tight with worry. "Each one is at least 10 times our size." Doyen ran a hand through his dark hair. This was supposed to be a simple exploration mission. Find new worlds, map new systems, maybe discover some interesting rocks or unusual stellar phenomena. Nobody said anything about stumbling into someone's military base. "Send our friendship message," he ordered. "The one in mathematics and basic scientific concepts. Show them we come in peace." Hari looked up from the engineering station. "Captain, their weapons are powering up. All of them." On the Calvex flagship, the Admiral watched as the alien ship responded to their warning with a stream of meaningless numbers and simple diagrams. It looked like something children would send. Basic counting and pictures of atoms. Was this species mocking them? "They refuse to comply," announced the tactical officer. "The vessel continues on its current course toward Tharmon." Velkarn felt his neck plates rise in anger. This was an insult to the Empire. These aliens had entered forbidden space, ignored direct orders, and sent back childish messages. There was only one response to such disrespect. "All ships, arm weapons, prepare to disable the intruder." 300 warships turned their guns toward the small human vessel, energy weapons charged with a whine that could be felt through the hull. Missile batteries opened. This would be over in seconds. "Fire! They're firing!" Yunji shouted from the pilot station. Doyen gripped his chair. They had no real weapons, nothing that could stand against a single warship, let alone hundreds. Earth's defense protocols had been clear. If you meet hostile aliens, run. Don't fight, don't provoke, just run as fast as possible. But there was nowhere to run. They were surrounded. The defensive system activated automatically. It was a simple piece of equipment, something every Earth ship had carried since the AI wars a century ago. When weapons fire was detected, it created a small electromagnetic field around the ship, disrupting targeting systems and causing most energy weapons to lose cohesion. It was designed to buy a few seconds, enough time to escape. Nobody knew what would happen when that field met an entire fleet whose ships were all networked together. The first missiles died in flight. Their guidance systems scrambled. Energy beams scattered harmlessly into space. But the field didn't stop at the edge of the human ship. It traveled through the network connections that linked every Calvex vessel, spreading like water through paper. On 300 warships, weapons suddenly stopped working. Targeting computers crashed. Fire control systems displayed error messages. Guns that had been about to unleash enough firepower to crack a planet now sat silent and dark. In the sudden quiet, Belkarn stared at his weapons display in disbelief. Every indicator showed red. 0 operational weapons across the entire fleet. Every single gun, every missile, every defensive system, all offline. "Report," he roared. Officers scrambled at their stations, fingers flying over controls that wouldn't respond. The tactical officer's voice shook. "Sir, complete weapons failure across all ships. Our network shows the same errors on every vessel in the fleet. It's like something reached into our systems and turned everything off. How is that possible?" "I don't know, sir. The alien ship didn't fire anything. There was no attack. Our weapons just stopped." The Admiral's hands curled into fists. In one moment, the pride of the Calvex Empire had been reduced to nothing more than helpless metal boxes floating in space. And the alien ship sat there untouched, probably laughing at them. On the Wandering Star, nobody was laughing. Hyun stared at his science station with growing horror. "Captain, the defensive field is showing unusual readings. I think it spread into their computer systems." "What?" Joyen moved to look over Hyun's shoulder. "Their ships are all connected on a single network. When our field tried to disrupt their targeting systems, it traveled through their network connections. I'm reading system failures across their entire fleet." "How bad?" Hyun's face was pale. "Captain, I think we just disabled 300 warships." The bridge went silent. Salman whispered, "We're dead. They're going to think we attacked them." "We didn't attack anyone," Doyen said firmly, though his heart was racing. "Our defensive system activated automatically. This was an accident." "Try telling them that," muttered Hari. Jiwoo looked up from communications. "Captain, I'm receiving hundreds of transmissions from the alien ships. I can't understand the language, but the tone is clear. They're panicking." Doyen closed his eyes. First contact with an alien species, Earth's greatest dream, and they had just started a war by accident. He opened his eyes and looked at his crew. Good people, smart people, who had volunteered for this mission because they believed humanity deserved to reach for the stars. "Get me every scrap of information about those ships," he ordered. "Languages, power systems, anything. We're going to fix this before it gets worse." On the Calvex flagship, Admiral Velkarn watched the small alien ship on his screen. It hadn't moved. Hadn't run. It just sat there as if waiting for something. The Admiral's communication officer spoke quietly. "Sir, emergency transmission from the capital. The Emperor wants to know why his fortress fleet has gone silent." Velkarn closed his eyes. What could he say? That a single small ship had destroyed the fighting capability of the Empire's finest fleet without firing a shot, that everything they believed about their military superiority had just proven to be an illusion? He opened his eyes and stared at the human ship. What were these creatures? And what kind of power did they possess if this was just their defense? "Send to all ships," he said slowly. "Maintain positions. Do not attempt to approach the alien vessel. And someone find out how to get our weapons back online. Now." In the space between the human ship and the Calvex fleet, silence stretched like a held breath. Neither side moved. Neither side fired. Both sides tried desperately to understand what had just happened. And in the capital of the Calvex Empire, an emperor sat forward on his throne and demanded answers about the species that had just made his navy disappear. The hours after the blackout were chaos. Inside the Wandering Star, Hyun worked frantically at his science station, trying to understand what their defensive system had done. Streams of data filled his screens, none of it making sense. The field should have stopped after a few seconds. It should have protected only their ship. Instead, it had reached out like invisible fingers and touched every vessel in the Calvex fleet. "It's their network," he said finally, his voice tired. "Captain, these people built their entire military around a single connected system. Every ship talks to every other ship constantly. When our field hit their network, it spread like a virus through their connections." Doyen rubbed his face. He had been awake for 18 hours. "Can we undo it?" "I don't know. I'd need to understand their systems better. Right now I'm just guessing based on the signals we're intercepting." "Keep trying." Doyen turned to Jiwoo at communications. "Anything from them?" "Lots of chatter, but I still can't translate it. I'm running everything through the language algorithms, but it's going to take time." She paused, listening to something on her headset. "Wait, Captain, I'm picking up distress signals." From which ship? From dozens of ships. Maybe more. Jiwoo's fingers flew over her controls. These signals are automated. Medical emergencies. Life support failures. Captain, some of their ships are dying. The bridge went quiet. Somin spoke first, her voice small. We did that? The blackout must have affected more than just weapons, Hyun said. If their systems are as interconnected as I think, life support could be on the same network. Doyen stood up, his decision made. Hurry, prep the shuttles. Load them with emergency medical supplies and oxygen canisters. Yoonji, Taeyang, you're with me. We're going to help them. Captain, that's insane, Hari protested. They tried to kill us. If we get close to those ships, they might try again. They can't, their weapons are dead, remember? And people are dying because of our defensive system. We have to help. Sir, we don't even know if our medical supplies will work on their biology, added Taeyang from the medical station. We could make things worse. Then we give them oxygen and power cells and let them figure it out. I'm not going to sit here and watch people suffocate because we're afraid. Doyen's voice was firm. Get moving. That's an order. On the Calvex flagship, Admiral Velkarn listened to the disaster reports with growing dread. The weapons failure had been bad enough, but the blackout had cascaded through systems in ways nobody had predicted. 17 ships had lost life support completely. Hundreds of crew members were in danger. Engineering teams are trying to restore power manually, his second officer reported, but without the main network, they have to do everything by hand. It's taking too long. Divert all rescue shuttles to the affected vessels, Velkarn ordered. Pull crew from ships with working life support if you have to. I want everyone off those dying ships within the hour. Sir, we don't have enough shuttles. Some of the smaller escort vessels only have one shuttle each, and those are needed for their own emergencies. Velkarn slammed his fist on the console. The Empire's greatest fleet, reduced to helplessness by systems they had trusted without question. They had built everything on the network because it made them efficient, made them fast. Now that efficiency was killing them, Admiral, the sensor officer's voice was sharp with surprise. The alien ship is launching small craft. Multiple vessels heading toward our damaged ships. What? Velkarn pulled up the tactical display. Sure enough, 3 small craft had left the alien ship and were moving directly toward the Calvex vessels with the worst life support failures. Are they attacking? No, sir. Their weapons are still inactive. They appear to be... I don't know what they're doing. Velkarn watched in confusion as the alien craft approached his dying ships. What kind of trick was this? Doyen piloted the first shuttle personally, with Yoonji and Taeyang behind him. The Calvex warship ahead of them was enormous, a wedge of dark metal covered in gun ports and sensor arrays. It looked like something built only for destruction. And right now it was Tomb. Life signs? He asked. Faint, Taeyang replied. I'm reading what might be heartbeats, but the biology is completely different from ours. Whatever they are, they're in trouble. Their airlock is standard mechanical design, Yoonji noted. I think I can interface with it. They docked carefully, the shuttle's small frame dwarfed by the warship's hull. Yoonji worked the controls, and after a few tense minutes, the airlock cycled open. Breathable air rushed out, mixing with the shuttle's atmosphere. What rushed in with it was the smell of something burning and the sound of alarms. Doyen grabbed an oxygen tank and pushed into the warship. The corridor beyond was dark, lit only by emergency lights that flickered weakly. The air was thin and tasted of metal, and lying on the floor trying to breathe was the first alien any human had ever seen in person. It was larger than a human, with gray skin covered in overlapping plates like armor. 4 arms, 2 legs, a face that was almost familiar but wrong in ways that made Doyen's mind struggle to process it. The creature's eyes were closed and its breathing was shallow. Taeyang pushed past him, medical scanner in hand. It's suffocating. Oxygen levels in here are at 15% and dropping. She pulled an oxygen mask from her pack and fitted it over the alien's face. The device was designed for humans, but Taeyang made it work, adjusting straps and flow rates. The alien's eyes opened. It saw them, and for a moment pure terror filled its gaze. Then it sucked in oxygen through the mask, and the terror turned to confusion. It's okay, Doyen said softly, knowing the creature couldn't understand. We're here to help. They found 6 more aliens in that section of the ship, all in various states of oxygen deprivation. Taeyang worked on each one, providing oxygen and checking vital signs with equipment that wasn't designed for this biology. The aliens watched them with wide eyes, too weak to resist, too desperate to refuse help. One of them, younger than the others by the look of its smoother plates, grabbed Doyen's arm. It said something in a rasping voice. The words were meaningless, but the meaning was clear. Thank you. Across the fleet, the scene repeated. Harry and Young-Ho brought portable power generators to a ship whose reactors had shut down. Soman and Minji evacuated crew members from a vessel that was venting atmosphere. Humans in simple exploration suits moved through ships designed for war, carrying supplies and offering help to people who had tried to kill them an hour before. On the Calvex flagship, Admiral Velkarn watched the reports come in, each one more impossible than the last. The aliens were saving his people. They had disabled the entire fleet, and now they were saving the crew. Sir? His second officer said quietly. One of the rescued crew members just sent a transmission. He says the aliens gave him oxygen when his ship's life support failed. He says they could have let him die, but they didn't. Velkarn stared at the message. He had been ready to destroy that small ship. He had given the order to fire without hesitation, without mercy, and when his fleet fell dark, those same aliens had come to rescue his people. Get me a communication line to that ship, he ordered. I need to speak to whoever commands it. Sir, we still don't have translation protocols. I don't care. Open a channel anyway. They'll understand that we're trying to talk. Minutes later, Jiwoo's surprised voice came over Doyen's helmet radio. Captain, the big ship is hailing us. Visual and audio. I think their commander wants to talk. Doyen floated in the corridor of the Calvex warship, an unconscious alien in his arms as he carried it toward his shuttle. Patch it through to my helmet display. The screen flickered to life, showing an alien face. This one was older, with deeper plates and scars across its face. Its eyes were sharp and intelligent, and it was staring at Doyen with an expression that might have been respect. The alien spoke. The words were harsh and clicking, meaningless to human ears, but the alien raised one of its hands to its chest in what might have been a salute. Doyen shifted the unconscious alien to get a hand free, then placed his hand on his own chest and nodded. He had no idea what the gesture meant to these people, but maybe they would understand the intent. The alien commander's eyes widened slightly. Then it nodded back. For a moment, human and alien stared at each other across impossible distances of language and culture. No words passed between them, but understanding did. Back on the wandering star, Hyun made a discovery. Deep in the captured signal data from the Calvex network, he found a transmission from the capital world. It was encrypted, but the encryption was old, simple by human standards. His computer cracked it in minutes. What he read made his blood run cold. Captain, he said into the communication channel, his voice urgent. We have a problem. A big one. What kind of problem? Doyen was loading the last rescued aliens into his shuttle, the kind where the Calvex Empire thinks we're an invasion force. They're mobilizing a war fleet. Captain, they're sending 10,000 ships toward human space, and they're planning to strike before we can bring reinforcements. The shuttle went silent. Finally, Yunji spoke. 10,000 ships? That's what the message says. They think the blackout was a demonstration of power, a warning shot before the real attack. They're preparing for total war. Doyen closed his eyes. They had come in peace. They had tried to help. The wandering star limped away from Tharmon with half its systems screaming warnings. Harry worked in the engine room, surrounded by exposed pipes that leaked coolant and circuit boards that sparked with each jump through hyperspace. The ship was designed for exploration, for slow, careful journeys between stars. Now they were pushing it to its absolute limits, racing to warn Earth of the coming storm. Engines at 110%. Young-Ho reported from the reactor station. Sweat ran down his face despite the cold air. We can maintain this for maybe 2 more days before something critical fails. We need 3 days to reach the communication relay, Doyen said from the bridge. Can you give me 3 days? Harry looked at the temperature readings on the main drive. They were already in the red zone. I'll try, Captain, but I can't promise anything. Try is all I'm asking. On the bridge, Minho hunched over his linguistics station, surrounded by recordings of Calvex transmissions. He had been working nonstop since they left Tharmon, trying to crack the alien language. Coffee cups littered his workspace, and his eyes were red from staring at symbols and sound waves. I've got basic grammatical structure, he muttered. Subject-object-verb order similar to Old Earth languages. The clicking sounds are actually part of their vowel system, I think. Maybe I need more data. Keep going, Doyen encouraged. We need to be able to talk to them if we're going to stop this war. if we survive long enough to talk. Soman adjusted their course, eyes locked on the navigation display. Captain, we're burning through fuel reserves faster than planned. At this rate, we'll run dry before we reach the relay. Then we'll coast the last part of the journey. We just need to get the warning out. Behind them, the Calvex war fleet was gathering. 10,000 ships, each one carrying weapons that could crack planets and armies that had never known defeat. They moved into formation like a school of metal fish, beautiful and terrible, and at their head was a dreadnought that dwarfed even the fortress ships at Tharmon. On the Wandering Star, Jiwoo picked up the fleet's departure transmission. She ran it through Minho's partial translation algorithms, and what came back made her stomach turn cold. Captain, the war fleet just launched. They're calling it Operation Final Peace. According to this transmission, they plan to neutralize all human military assets and then occupy our worlds until we surrender our defensive technology. They want our defensive system? Hyun looked up from his science station in surprise. It's not even a weapon. It's just an EM field generator with some smart algorithms. To them, it's the most powerful weapon they've ever seen. Doyen replied grimly. We disabled 300 warships without firing a shot. From their perspective, we're unstoppable. Yoonji laughed without humor. If they only knew we were running on luck and spare parts. Our biggest gun is a mining laser that couldn't scratch the paint on one of their scouts. They don't know that, Ara said from the intelligence station. She had been studying the captured Calvex data, learning about their empire and their military capabilities. Captain, these people have conquered 47 star systems. They've never lost a war. They've never even lost a major battle. Their entire culture is built around military strength. And we just humiliated them, Jiho added from the cultural analysis station. To them, what we did was worse than an attack. We made them look weak in front of their entire empire. So they're coming to prove they're not weak by destroying us. Doyen rubbed his temples. This is insane. We're not soldiers. We're explorers. Tell that to the 10,000 warships heading toward Earth. A noise from the back of the bridge made them all turn. Sektar stood there, the young Calvex officer they had rescued. He was still weak from the oxygen deprivation, but he had refused to be locked in a room. Taiyang had finally agreed to let him move around the ship under supervision. You speak our language? Doyen asked, surprised. Sektar made a gesture that might have been a nod. He had been listening to the crew talk for 2 days, and his species learned quickly. Small words. I understand small words. His voice was rough, struggling with sounds his throat wasn't designed to make. Your language is difficult. Our language is difficult? Minho looked up from his translation work. Your people click and whistle at the same time. It's like trying to speak with 3 mouths. Sektar's plates rippled in what might have been amusement. He moved to the view screen, looking at the stars rushing past. You run. You fear the fleet. We're trying to warn our people, Doyen said. We don't want a war. War comes anyway. The Emperor has decided. When the Emperor decides, nothing changes his mind. Sektar turned to face them. You saved my life. You saved many lives. But the Empire does not see this. The Empire only sees that you made our great fleet helpless. This cannot stand. We must prove we are strong. By killing millions of innocent people? Jiho's voice was sharp. Millions? Sektar's eyes widened. How many of your kind exist? On Earth alone? About 12 billion. In all our colonies, maybe 15 billion total. The Calvex officer was silent for a long moment. So many, he whispered. The Emperor thinks your kind is like us. Maybe 1 billion, maybe 2 billion across many worlds. Not 15 billion. If he knew, would it change anything? Doyen asked. Sektar's plates drooped. No, it would make him more afraid. More determined to strike first. Ara leaned forward. Tell me about your empire. How does it work? Who makes decisions? The Emperor commands. The military obeys. The people serve. This is the way it has always been. But who advises the Emperor? Who tells him when he's wrong? No one tells the Emperor he is wrong. To do so is to die. The bridge went quiet. Finally, Hyun spoke. So we're dealing with an absolute dictatorship backed by the most powerful military in this region of space. Great. Just great. There must be someone who can reason with him, Jiho insisted. Some faction in the government that wants peace. There is no government except the Emperor, Sektar said. There are no factions. There is only service to the Empire. Then we're fighting an entire civilization that can't even conceive of questioning their leader. Doyen stood up and paced the small bridge. How do you negotiate with people who don't understand the concept of compromise? You don't, Ara said quietly. You either run or you fight. Earth can't fight that fleet. We barely have a defense force. Most of our ships are transports and mining vessels. We'd lose in days. Then we run. Evacuate Earth, scatter the colonies. Become refugees in our own galaxy. 15 billion people? Soman shook her head. We don't have the ships. We don't have the time. Most people would die before we could evacuate them. The bridge fell into grim silence. They had spent 8 months traveling in hope of finding new friends among the stars. Instead, they had found an empire that could only understand strength, and they had accidentally shown them a strength that didn't exist. Wait, Hyun said suddenly. What if that's the answer? What if what's the answer? The blackout. At Tharmon, we disabled 300 ships by accident. Our defensive system spread through their network because everything they have is connected together. Hyun's fingers flew over his console. What if we could do it again? On purpose this time, bigger. Yoonji turned in her pilot chair. You want to disable 10,000 warships? Why not? We did 300. It's the same principle, just larger scale. That was an accident in a dense nebula, Hari said over the intercom. We can't replicate those conditions. Actually, we might be able to. Hyun pulled up a star map. The Veil Nebula. It's between here and Earth, and it's full of electromagnetic storms. If we could lure the Calvex fleet into the densest part of the nebula and trigger our defensive system there, the nebula would amplify the effect, Doyun finished. Like it did at Tharmon, but even stronger. Maybe strong enough to disable the entire fleet at once. That's a big maybe, Ara pointed out. What if it doesn't work? What if we just make them angrier? Then we're no worse off than we are now. Doyen studied the map. The Veil Nebula was a massive cloud of ionized gas and electromagnetic chaos. Ships avoided it because sensors didn't work properly inside and communication was nearly impossible. But that same chaos might be exactly what they needed. It's a trap, Sektar said. All the humans turned to look at him. You want to lead the fleet into a trap? Yes. The Admiral will know. Admiral Velkarn is wise. He will see the trap. Maybe, but will he be able to convince the Emperor? From what you've told us, the Emperor doesn't listen to anyone. Sektar's plates rippled. This is true. The Emperor listens only to victory and defeat. He looked at the nebula on the map. If you do this thing, if you lead the fleet into your trap, many Calvex will die. Ships will be lost in the storm. Better than 15 billion humans dying, Jiho said. Yes, better. Sektar touched the view screen with one of his 4 hands. I will help you. I know how the fleet thinks. How they move. I can help you make this trap work. Why? Doyen asked. Why would you help us against your own people? Because you saved my life when you had no reason to. Because you showed mercy when we showed none. Because... Sektar struggled with the words. Because I think the Empire has forgotten that strength is not just about weapons. You taught me that. Your small ship, your small crew. You have a strength we do not understand. A strength that makes you... The Veil Nebula loomed ahead like a wall of color and chaos. Streams of ionized gas glowed in shades of purple and blue, twisted by magnetic fields into shapes that hurt to look at. Lightning arced between clouds of particles, each bolt carrying enough energy to fry a ship's systems. It was beautiful and deadly, and the wandering star was flying straight toward it. Engines are at 115%, Hari reported from the engine room. His voice was strained. I'm pulling power from life support, from communications, from everything I can. But we're still losing the race. The Calvex fleet is gaining on us. Let them gain, Doyen said calmly. We need them close enough to follow us in, but far enough that we reach the center first. Captain, you're asking me to thread a needle at faster than light speeds. If we miss our entry point by even a fraction, we could slam into a density pocket and be torn apart. Can you do it? A long pause. Then, yeah, I can do it. But Yoonji's gonna have to fly like she's never flown before. At the pilot station, Yoonji cracked her knuckles and grinned. Just tell me where to point this bucket of bolts. I'll get us there. Beside her, Soman worked on the navigation computer, calculating trajectories through a region of space where normal navigation was impossible. The electromagnetic storms are going to blind our sensors. We'll be flying by math and prayer. Then you better pray hard, Yoonji replied. In the back of the bridge, Sektar stood with Jiho, explaining the formations and tactics of the Calvex fleet. His four hands moved as he spoke, tracing patterns in the air. The dreadnought will stay in the center, protected by the outer ships. Admiral Velkarn commands from there. If you can disable the dreadnought, the fleet loses coordination. But they have individual commanders on each ship, right? Shiho asked. Yes, but they follow the Admiral's orders. Without his guidance, they will not know what to do. The Empire does not train soldiers to think independently. We train them to follow. That seems like a weakness. It is efficient, or it was, until we met your kind. Sektar looked at the view screen showing the approaching nebula. Your people are strange. Each of you thinks differently. You argue with your captain. You question orders. In the Empire, this would be chaos. But for you, it seems to work. It's called free will, Jiho said with a smile. We're not always good at using it, but we're stuck with it anyway. On the Calvex dreadnought, Admiral Velkarn watched his tactical display with growing unease. The human ship was leading them into the Veil Nebula, and every instinct he had was screaming that this was a trap. But the Emperor's orders were absolute. Pursue and destroy. Communications becoming difficult, sir, his comm officer reported. The electromagnetic interference is too strong. We're losing contact with the outer elements of the fleet. Switch to tight beam transmissions, and tell all ships to close formation. I want everyone within visual range once we enter the nebula proper. Sir, the humans are increasing speed. They're entering the nebula now. Velkarn watched as the small ship disappeared into the wall of glowing gas. For a moment, he considered ordering his fleet to stop, to wait outside until the humans emerged. But he knew they wouldn't emerge. They would hide in there, and the Emperor would demand to know why he had let them escape. All ships forward. Stay in formation. And someone remind me again why we're chasing one small ship with 10,000 warships. No one answered, because they were all thinking the same thing. This felt wrong. Inside the nebula, reality became a kaleidoscope of light and energy. The wandering star shuddered as waves of electromagnetic radiation washed over its hull. Displays flickered. Systems reset themselves, and through it all, Yunji kept them on course, her hand steady on the controls. Sensor range is down to 2 kilometers, Hyun reported. I can barely see the ship's own hull, let alone anything else. What about the Calvex fleet? Can't detect them. But if they followed us in, they're just as blind as we are. Sektar, Doyun called out. How will they track us without sensors? The Admiral is clever. He will follow our ion trail, the particles your engines leave behind. In normal space, it disperses quickly, but in the nebula, the electromagnetic fields will hold it together like a rope. So we're leaving them a path straight to us. Yes, which is what you want, is it not? It is. Somin, how long until we reach the densest part of the nebula? 18 minutes at current speed. But Captain, the density is increasing faster than my models predicted. We might have to slow down or risk colliding with a particle cloud. Slow down and we lose our lead. Keep going. Aye, Captain. Behind them, the Calvex fleet entered the nebula like a metal snake sliding into murky water. Ships that had been spread across kilometers of space now pulled tight together, each commander terrified of losing sight of the vessels around them. Communication was reduced to flashing lights and tight-beam lasers. Sensors showed nothing but static. This is madness, Velkarn's second officer muttered. We can't fight in these conditions. We can barely fly in these conditions. The humans can fly here, Velkarn replied. So we must as well. Maintain course. Follow their trail. Sir, several outer ships are reporting electrical failures. The nebula's energy is interfering with their systems. Divert power from non-essential systems to shielding. We need to stay operational until we catch them. On the Wandering Star, Young-ho worked frantically in the reactor room, trying to keep the ship's power systems stable in the electromagnetic chaos. Every few seconds a surge would hit them, and he would have to redirect power flows to prevent an overload. It was like playing a musical instrument in an earthquake. Hari, I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this up, he said into his communicator. The reactor is taking a beating. Just hold it together for 10 more minutes, Hari replied. That's all we need. 10 minutes. That's about 9 minutes longer than I'm comfortable with, but I'll try. On the bridge, Minho had abandoned his translation work to help Hyun monitor the defensive system. They had one chance to get this right. If the system didn't activate properly, or if the nebula didn't amplify the field enough, the Calvex fleet would tear through them like paper. Running final diagnostics, Minho said. All circuits are green. The field generator is primed and ready. What about the amplification effect? Doyen asked. Will the nebula really boost our signal? Theoretically, yes. The ionized particles should carry the electromagnetic pulse through the entire region. But Captain, I've never tested this. Nobody has. This is all guesswork and hope. Hope is what humans are good at. Keep checking those systems. Taeyang moved through the ship, securing equipment and making sure everyone was strapped in safely. Bora, the botanist who had become an emergency medic, helped her prepare the medical bay for possible casualties. They both knew that if things went wrong in the nebula, there would be nothing they could do. But preparation gave them something to focus on besides their fear. Do you think we'll survive this? Bora asked quietly. I think we have a better chance than 15 billion people on Earth if we don't try, Taeyang replied. That's good enough for me. The minutes ticked down. The wandering star pushed deeper into the nebula, following Soman's calculations toward the point of maximum electromagnetic density. Behind them, the Calvex fleet followed. 10,000 ships, blind and angry, chasing an enemy they couldn't see. 5 minutes, Soman called out. Doyen activated the ship-wide intercom. All hands, this is the captain. In 5 minutes, we're going to be at the center of the densest electromagnetic storm in this region of space. When we get there, we're going to trigger our defensive system and hope it does to the Calvex fleet what it did at Tharmon. If it works, every ship behind us goes dark. If it doesn't work, we'll probably be dead before we know we failed. Either way, it's been an honor serving with all of you. Humanity sent us out here to find new life, and we did. Let's make sure that contact doesn't end in genocide. Doyen out. He closed the channel and looked around at his crew. Yoonji and Somin focused on their stations. Hyun and Minho watched the defensive system readouts. Jiwoo monitored what little communication still worked. Ara and Jiho stood ready to help wherever needed. And Sektar stood in the corner, watching them all with his alien eyes. 3 minutes, Somin said. In the engine room, Hari felt the ship beginning to shake. The electromagnetic forces buffeting them were getting stronger. Metal groaned. Circuits sparked. He grabbed onto a support beam and held tight. Young-ho, kill all non-essential power. Everything except life support, propulsion, and the defensive system. Already done. Hari, the hull temperature is rising. The nebula's radiation is heating us up. I know. Just hold together a little longer, old girl, Hari said to the ship itself. Just a little longer. 2 minutes, Samin called out. The Calvex fleet felt the storm building around them. Lightning arced between ships now, drawn by their metal hulls. Shields flickered and failed. And still they followed because the Emperor had commanded it and disobedience meant death. Admiral Vel Karn gripped his command chair as the dreadnought shuddered. Status of the fleet? 37 ships have reported critical failures, sir. They're dropping out of formation. 200 more are experiencing difficulties, and we still can't see the human ship. How far ahead are they? The wandering star limped through the nebula's dying storms, its engines barely functioning. Its hull scorched black from electromagnetic lightning. Inside the ship, every crew member pushed themselves beyond exhaustion. They had one goal: save as many Calvex as possible before their own ship gave out completely. I've got life support failures on 217 ships, Hyun reported. His voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. Another 500 are showing critical reactor instability. If those reactors breach, the explosions could trigger a chain reaction through the fleet. Prioritize the reactor failures first, Doyen ordered. A containment breach kills everyone. Life support failures give us more time. Taeyang and Bora had converted the cargo bay into an emergency triage center. Rescued Calvex lay on makeshift beds, breathing through human oxygen masks that barely fit their alien biology. Some were conscious and watched the humans with fear and confusion. Others were too weak to do anything but breathe. We're running out of medical supplies, Taeyang said quietly to Bora, and I'm not even sure what I'm giving them is helping. Their biology is different enough that I'm basically guessing. They're alive, Bora replied, checking the vital signs of a young Calvex officer. That's more than they'd be if we weren't trying. Yoonji and Hari took one of the 2 functioning shuttles out to a Calvex destroyer, whose reactor was going critical. The electromagnetic interference from the nebula made flying nearly impossible. But Yoonji navigated by instinct and stubbornness, dodging debris and lightning strikes. I see it, Hari said, pointing at the disabled warship. Radiation levels are spiking. That reactor is going to blow in minutes. They docked hard against the Calvex hull, and Hari grabbed his tools and a portable reactor controller he had jerry-rigged from human equipment. Inside the alien ship, emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly green glow. The corridor walls were hot to the touch. A Calvex engineer met them halfway to the reactor room. It gestured frantically with all four arms, speaking in rapid clicks that neither human understood. But fear was universal and the message was clear. Help us. Hari followed the alien to the reactor chamber. What he saw made his blood run cold. The containment field was failing, and radiation was flooding the chamber. The reactor's core glowed an angry red, pulsing with unstable energy. Okay, he muttered to himself. You've fixed 100 reactors. This one just happens to be alien technology in a ship that's falling apart in an electromagnetic storm. No pressure. He attached his portable controller to what he hoped was the reactor's command interface. Symbols appeared on the small screen, none of which made sense. But energy was energy, and reactors followed certain universal principles. He started making adjustments, watching the radiation readings and hoping he wasn't making things worse. The Calvex engineer watched him work, then suddenly understood what the human was trying to do. It pushed Hari aside gently and pointed at different controls, speaking urgently. Together, human and alien worked to stabilize the reactor, using hand gestures and shared desperation as their only language. 10 minutes later, the reactor's glow faded from angry red to stable blue. The containment field strengthened. The crisis was over. The Calvex engineer slumped against the wall, exhausted. Then it reached out with one of its hands and touched Hari's shoulder, saying something in a voice that sounded almost like gratitude. "You're welcome," Hari said, even though he knew the alien couldn't understand. "Now let's get out of here before something else breaks." On the Wandering Stars bridge, Jiwoo coordinated the rescue efforts, tracking which ships had been helped and which still needed aid. Minho sat beside her, his translation algorithms finally beginning to work properly after analyzing thousands of hours of Calvex communications. "Captain, I'm getting a transmission," Jiwoo said suddenly. "It's in Calvex, but Minho's program is translating it." "It's from the Dreadnought. Let's hear it." A voice filled the bridge, alien and clicking, but underneath it came Minho's translation program speaking in flat, emotionless English. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Velkarn of the Calvex Imperial Fleet. I request permission to come aboard your ship. I wish to speak with your commander, alone if possible. I give my word that I intend no harm." Doyen looked at his crew. Ara immediately shook her head. "It could be a trap. The moment he gets on board, he could sabotage our systems or take hostages." "He gave his word," Sektar said quietly. Everyone turned to look at the Calvex officer who had become their reluctant ally. In the Empire, when a senior officer gives his word, it is a sacred thing. To break it means death by dishonor. Admiral Velkarn will not break his word. "You trust him?" Doyen asked. "I trust the code he lives by. It is stronger than any chain." Doyen made his decision. "Tell the Admiral he's welcome aboard. Unji, when you and Hari get back, take the shuttle and pick him up." An hour later, Admiral Velkarn stepped onto the bridge of the Wandering Star. He had to duck to fit through the doorway, and his forearms barely fit in the cramped space. The Admiral looked around at the human crew with eyes that had seen countless battles and planets conquered. Now those eyes were tired and confused. "Captain Doyun?" he asked, his voice rumbling through the translation device Minho had prepared. "That's me." Doyen stood up and extended his hand, as Sektar had taught him was the human custom. Velkarn looked at the hand, then carefully reached out with one of his own and grasped it. "You are smaller than I expected," Velkarn said. "All of you are. Your ship is tiny. Your weapons are non-existent, yet you have defeated the greatest fleet in the Empire, twice." "We didn't defeat you," Doyen replied. "We defended ourselves." "There's a difference." "Is there?" The Admiral moved to the view screen, looking out at his disabled fleet. "I have lost 10,000 warships without you firing a single shot. That sounds like defeat to me. We disabled your weapons. We didn't destroy your ships, and now we're trying to save your crews. Does that sound like an enemy?" Velkarn was silent for a long moment. "No," he admitted. "It sounds like something I do not understand." He turned to face Doyen. "The Emperor sent us to destroy your species. He believes you are an existential threat to the Empire. After what I have witnessed, I cannot say he is wrong. We're not a threat. We're explorers, scientists. We came looking for friends, not enemies. Yet you possess weapons that can disable entire fleets. That's not a weapon. It's a defensive system. We built it to protect ourselves, not to attack others. Your intentions do not matter. The capability is what concerns the Emperor, and he will send more fleets, larger fleets. He will not stop until your species is neutralized or destroyed. Doyen felt his heart sink. Then this isn't over. No, it is just beginning. Velkarn moved closer, his voice dropping low. But perhaps it does not have to escalate. Captain, I have a proposal. If you are willing to listen, I'm listening. The Emperor fears your power because he does not understand it. He sees only that you can disable our ships with ease. He does not see that you choose to save our lives rather than take them. He does not understand that your small ship represents something the Empire has never encountered. Strength tempered by mercy. How do we make him understand? You cannot. The Emperor has ruled for 60 years. He has known only victory and submission. He cannot comprehend a species that wins without conquering. Velkarn looked at Sektar, who stood quietly in the corner. But others in the Empire can learn. Others can change, and what are you suggesting? Return with me to the capital. Not as prisoners, but as ambassadors. Bring your ship, your crew, and show the Empire what humanity truly is. Let them see that you saved 10,000 ships worth of Calvex's lives when you could have let us die. Let them hear your words and judge for themselves whether you are a threat. The Emperor wants us dead, Era pointed out. Walking into his capital sounds like suicide. It might be, Velkarn acknowledged. But it is the only path I see that does not end in war. If you run, the Emperor will send more fleets. If you fight, you will have to kill to survive, and that will prove the Emperor right. But if you come willingly, if you show the Empire that humans are more than weapons in a small ship, perhaps minds can change. Doyen looked at his crew. What do you think? I think it's insane, Yunji said immediately. I also think it might be our only chance. The Admiral's logic is sound, Hyun added. We can't run forever, and we can't keep disabling fleets without eventually causing deaths. Diplomacy is our best option, even if it gets us killed, even then. Because the alternative is 15 billion humans dead when the next fleet reaches Earth. One by one, the crew voiced their agreement. Finally, Doyen turned back to Velkarn. We'll come, but we want guarantees. Safe passage for our ship, freedom to communicate with Earth, and no weapons pointed at us until we've had a chance to speak. I can guarantee safe passage. The rest will be up to the Emperor. Velkarn extended his hand again in the human gesture of agreement. You are either the bravest species I have ever encountered or the most foolish. I am not sure which. Can't it be both? Doyen asked with a tired smile. The journey back to Calvex space took 3 weeks. The wandering star, battered and barely functional, was escorted by a fleet of limping warships that had been disabled in the nebula. During those weeks, something unexpected happened.